These are serious allegations which were investigated by the China Tribunal, and that was chaired by the eminent British lawyer, Sir Geoffrey Nice KC. They concluded, having seen the evidence, that forced organ harvesting has been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale, and that Falun Gong practitioners have been one and probably the main source of organ supply. And they said that these crimes against humanity may well have been carried out also against Uyghur Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists and Christians. These are serious allegations, which is why we in the British Parliament, in both the Commons and the Lords, and across the political divide, came together to move amendments to legislation which severely penalise anyone who's found to have collaborated in these abhorrent crimes. And why do we care? It's because we're passionately supportive of Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that insists that everyone has the right to believe, not to believe, or to change their belief. It's for those kind of reasons that legislators have a duty to use the platforms that they have to speak up and to legislate.
My name is Ann-Sofie ALM and I'm a Member of Parliament in Sweden. I'm one of the initiating co-signatories for the Universal Declaration on Combating and Preventing Forced Organ Harvesting. I visited Taiwan last spring and I certainly fell in love with your beautiful island, but I got also very concerned by the threat of your freedom from the Communist Party of China. I've talked to witnesses who fled from persecution. I've heard the medical doctor who harvested organs from prisoners and found them still alive. And that cutting out the hearts and other organs from living victims constitutes one of the worst mass atrocities of this century. Taiwan can play a very important role in this fight against forced organ harvesting since you are very unique. You are strong, democratic and free with the rule of law. It is a shame that this crime continues, but together we can stop this. Together we must stop this.
Sí, soy Hermann TERTSCH, soy eurodiputado, miembro del Parlamento Europeo por el grupo político ECR. Quiero desde aquí mandar un saludo y mis felicitaciones por la lucha en Taiwán en contra de esa monstruosidad que es la extracción forzosa de órganos, el granjeo de órganos que se hace en otras partes del mundo y especialmente en la República Popular China. Bajo el régimen comunista se cometen muchísimas atrocidades, pero esta es sin duda una de las mayores, el robo a los seres humanos de sus órganos para su posterior comercialización sanitaria es un espanto que debemos perseguir en todo el mundo, señalando a aquellos que lo perpetran y realmente condenando cualquier tipo de práctica y cualquier tipo de régimen que pueda permitir o incluso fomentar esta monstruosidad. Les felicito, por tanto, por esta iniciativa y saben que cuentan con todo nuestro apoyo desde el Parlamento Europeo, que ya en 2 ocasiones ha aprobado resoluciones en contra de estas monstruosas prácticas.
안녕하세요. 한국의 방송언론인 김현철 PD입니다. 우선 취지재 위원님을 비롯해 대만 입법원에서 세계 인권의 날을 맞이해 강제장기적출 반대 입법 글로벌 액션 기자회견을 주최하게 된 것을 축하드립니다. 대만은 지속적으로 국제사회에서 중국에서의 생체장기 적출을 근절하기 위해 노력해왔습니다. 많은 환자가 중국에서 장기 이식을 받은 한국도 대만과 함께 생체장기 적출 진실을 알리기 위해 노력해왔습니다. 저는 2017년 가을 중국 최대 장기 이식병원을 직접 취재해 불법 이식 사실을 밝혀낸 바 있습니다. 방송을 통해 이 사실을 한국에 널리 전해졌습니다. 이후 저는 영국 런던의 국제형사재판소에 출석해 제가 본 진실을 세계에서 증언한 바 있습니다. 더 이상 우리가 밝혀내야 할 진실은 없습니다. 중국에서 생체 강제장기 적출과 불법 이식이 일어나고 있다는 사실은 누구나 아는 명백한 사실이 되었습니다. 이제 우리가 구체적으로 실천하고 바꿔나가야 할 때입니다. 앞으로 대만이 강제 장기 적출 반인류 범죄를 반대하기 위한 형사특별법을 제정할 계획이라고 들었습니다. 여러분들의 실천에 큰 박수를 보내며 역사의 발자취로 남을 것입니다. 끝까지 힘차게 나가시길 기원합니다. 감사합니다.
Bonjour, je suis Thierry, le président de CAP Liberté de Conscience. Nous devons aujourd'hui soutenir et suivre les législateurs taïwanais dans un élan de solidarité et de soutien pour que Taïwan et d'autres pays adoptent des lois pénales pour punir les atrocités des prélèvements d'organes forcés. Le prélèvement d'organes forcés devrait être condamné partout dans le monde. Je vous invite également à soutenir la déclaration internationale contre les prélèvements d'organes forcés pour promouvoir une législation pénale au niveau international afin que les responsables de ces atrocités soient sanctionnés. J'espère que Taïwan, en adoptant une législation contre les prélèvements d'organes forcés, puisse être l'exemple à suivre par la communauté internationale.
Ni hao. My name is Boriana ÅBERG and I am a member of the Swedish Parliament and chair of the Swedish Taiwanese Parliamentary Association. The issue of forced organ harvesting in China has been repeatedly reported in Swedish and international media. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe voted for a resolution based on a report concluding that in China, the source of most organ transplants was from the killing of prisoners of conscience, primarily practitioners of the spiritual practice Falun Gong and other minority groups as Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Christians. The Communist Party's flagrant crimes against human rights must be condemned and stopped by the whole international community. And here, Taiwan has a unique and outstanding role to play in stopping these inhuman crimes. Taiwan, which shares the same language and culture as mainland China, is a role model for the people on the other side of the strait, a role model for democracy, respect of human rights and rule of law. Dear Taiwanese colleagues, I wish you success in legislation to stop forced organ harvesting.
Greetings from Brussels. The stories I have heard and read about forced organ harvesting in China are heartbreaking. It's completely abhorrent that the Chinese regime is involved in this, as the China Tribunal proved beyond reasonable doubt. It is now up to the international community to hold China accountable. States must look into how they can sanction individuals that are complicit in forced organ harvesting. Moreover, it is important that states take measures to ensure that their citizens and medical professionals do not become complicit in forced organ harvesting.
こんにちは。私は中国における臓器移植を考える全国地方議員の会の代表世話人を務めております、逗子市議会議員の丸山弘明と申します。国連人権委員会において声明が発表されました通り、中国における臓器収奪は人類史上最悪の犯罪行為であり、決して許されるものではありません。逗子市議会では、逗子日台友好議員連盟の会長を務めており、逗子のみならず、神奈川県内の市町村に声をかけ、小田原市、寒川町、三浦市にも日台友好議員連盟の設立のお手伝いをさせていただくほどの台湾大好き人間です。その台湾でこの度、世界宣言に対して複数の立法院の議員の皆様にご賛同いただき、志を同じくできますことを心より感謝し、お喜びを申し上げます。
The Academy of Forensic Nurses is honored to be part of the global legislation campaign to combat and prevent forced organ harvesting held at the Legislative Yuan of Taiwan. Hello, my name is Dr. Jennifer Johnson, President of the Academy of Forensic Nurses. The Academy of Forensic Nurses supports the Universal Declaration on combating and preventing forced organ harvesting, which emphasizes international cooperation in the collection, analysis, and exchange of information related to forced organ harvesting, and cooperation in investigating those atrocities related to forced organ harvesting. Safeguarding humankind's inalienable rights of all individuals to ensure freedom, justice, and peace in the world. The killing of vulnerable prisoners for the purpose of harvesting and selling their organs for transplant is an egregious and intolerable violation of the fundamental right to life. The Academy supports that all governments should combat and prevent forced organ harvesting by promoting the criminalization of certain acts and aid in the criminal prosecution of forced organ harvesting, both at the national and international levels. The AFN supports H.R. 6319, the Falun Gong Protection Act, which addresses those persons that have been victims of medical human rights atrocities. H.R. 6319 will initiate a public discussion on how best to protect U.S. and international interests regarding organ harvesting and transplantation. Collectively, we must support and promote respect in the observance of human rights and the fundamental freedoms of life, liberty, and security of each individual.
안녕하십니까. 한대만 의원친선협회장 조경태 의원입니다. 먼저 2022년 세계인권의 날을 기념하여 강제 장기적출이라는 반인도적인 범죄 행위를 근절하고 방지하기 위해 노력하고 계시는 한국장기이식윤리협회 이성원 회장님께 감사의 인사를 드립니다. 또한 관련 입법을 추진하고 오늘의 자리를 마련해 주신 대만 입법원 위원님들과 관계자 여러분께도 깊은 감사의 인사를 전합니다. 올해 5월에 발표된 한 보고서에 따르면 중국 내에서 아직까지도 강제 장기적출의 반인도적 범죄가 종식되지 않고 있는 것으로 보고되고 있습니다. 우리 모두는 생명과 인권이라는 인류의 보편적 가치를 중대하게 침해하는 강제 장기적출의 실상을 국제사회의 많은 사람들에게 알리고 해결책을 마련해야 할 책무가 있습니다. 우리나라가 이 사안에 대한 형법을 개정한 것처럼 대만도 하루빨리 강제 장기적출 범죄를 처벌하는 내용의 형사법이 제정될 수 있도록 저 또한 많은 관심을 가지고 힘쓰겠습니다. 오늘 이 자리를 통해 대만을 포함한 세계 각국에서 강제 장기적출에 대항하는 선진적인 입법이 이루어지길 기원합니다. 감사합니다.
On behalf of Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, it's our NGO's great honor to support the global legislation campaign to combat and prevent forced organ harvesting. DAFOH has been working tirelessly since 2006 to raise awareness about the crime of forced organ harvesting in China and has encouraged and supported legislation worldwide to end this medical crime against humanity and human rights atrocity. It's intolerable that forced organ harvesting, considered by experts to be a crime against humanity and the greatest violation of medical ethics of this century, has been taking place in China for over 20 years and continues till today. The innocent victims of this heinous crime are primarily Falun Gong practitioners, as well as other prisoners of conscience, including Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Christians. When doctors, those who have been entrusted to preserve and protect life, are violating the most basic codes of ethics and participating in crimes against humanity, it's the moral and ethical responsibility of the international medical community to condemn forced organ harvesting, defend the victims of this barbaric practice, and support governmental legislation to help end these atrocities and uphold the norms that safeguard humanity. We at DAFOH commend, support, and stand in solidarity with the Taiwan Congress in proposing a special criminal law against forced organ harvesting. Here in the United States, there are also 2 bills currently being proposed in Congress related to forced organ harvesting in China, which DAFOH is supporting, and we will continue to support legislation in governments internationally to enact forced organ harvesting legislation. This is perhaps one of the most powerful and effective means governments around the world can take to end one of the greatest violations of human rights of this century and the largest scale violation of medical ethics of our time.
Hello, my name is Nima Gholam Ali POUR and I am a member of parliament in Sweden. A couple of years ago, I visited an art exhibition that illustrated the forced organ harvesting that is organized by the Chinese Communist Party. My first reaction was pure shock. I could not imagine that people could do this to each other. I also thought about how I would feel if somebody imprisoned me and had the intention of stealing my organs. And I try to understand how terrible that situation is for the victims of the Chinese Communist Party. This kind of behavior, where a state treats people like animals, is never acceptable. This kind of barbaric behavior, where the Communist Party with force robs people of their organ, this forced organ harvesting can never be normalized. And decent people must stand up against the Chinese Communist Party. So when I was asked to give my support to legislative work to stop forced organ harvesting, I did not hesitate to show up and show my support. It is very important to draw people's attention to the oppression of the Chinese Communist Party and the victims of this oppression.
안녕하세요. 한국장기이식윤리협회 회장 이승원입니다. 세계 인권의 날을 맞이해 강제 장기적출 반대 입법 국제활동에 동참하게 되어 영광입니다. KAEOT는 세계의 5개 단체와 함께 2021년 강제 장기적출 근절과 방지를 위한 세계의 선언을 제안한 바 있습니다. KAEOT는 CCJ 의원님을 비롯해 대만 입법원과 정부가 강제 장기적출 종식에 노력함을 높이 평가합니다. 한국도 이를 본받아 한국 정부와 국회에 결의안을 제안하고 입법을 촉구하겠습니다. 이를 통해 중국 공산당의 파룬공 수연인 등 양심수에 대한 강제 장기 적출을 종식시킵시다. 끝으로 대만의 행운이 깃들고 만사가 여의하기를 바랍니다. 여러분께 깊은 존경을 표합니다.
The harvesting and theft of living human organs is a heinous crime covered under the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. I support the Convention call for its absolute and non-derogable prohibition. Earlier this year, in its resolution from May 2022, the European Parliament expressed its serious concern about reports of persistent, systematic, inhumane and state-sanctioned organ harvesting in the People's Republic of China. I support the push for legislation to punish the atrocities of forced organ harvesting.
According to the statement on UN human rights experts from June 2021, there is a credible information that detainees from ethnic, linguistic or religious minorities in China undergo medical exemptions to check matches for the organs for transplant without their free, voluntary and informed consent. Reports of systematic and institutionally sanctioned organ harvesting, particularly on imprisoned minorities such as the Uyghurs, Tibetans and Falun Gong practitioners, are extremely concerning and sadly not an isolated occurrence. The practice of forced organ harvesting is not only an acceptable medical ethics violation, as voluntary and informed consent is a precondition for ethical organ donation, but a grave violation to the fundamental right of life that needs to be eradicated in the modern day world whenever it horrendous practice happens.